When a moron who is not a mechanic pulls an engine out of a car, it's pretty easy to think it will never go back in. It's okay for you to think that. I'm thinking it too. In the last video, you saw an engine come out of this car. So what now? Let's take it apart and see if we can figure out what the problem was. So to take the wheel balancer hub off on the front, you're probably supposed to use a gear puller for this. That would certainly make it a heck of a lot easier. I didn't want to buy one, didn't have access to one, so what I did was inserted some longer bolts in there, used the bolts against the crankcase to push it off. Now this crankcase is aluminum, so what I eventually did was put in some spacers back there. We used files and stuff like that and pushed against those with the bolts to keep from damaging the aluminum crankcase. And after quite a bit of time poking around with this, we finally had success and we pulled this off. Next, we removed that pesky crankcase. And having a look behind the crankcase, the chain guides looked fantastic, the chains were in great shape, and everything back here looked to be as it should. Finally, I removed the oil filter housing, and that zipped off with just 4 bolts really quick. Let's take a look at the bottom end of the engine. The bottom end of the engine looks pretty doggone fantastic. What I'm doing here is I'm just testing to see if any of the rods have any play in them at all. None of them really did. I was really surprised. Now, I had heard that these big 6 engines were basically bulletproof on the bottom end, and this pretty much bore that out. Inevitably, I'm probably going to reuse the rods, so this was really good news. Also, after removing the rod caps and taking a look, the bearings were all in great shape, and of course the crank was also in fantastic shape. So this was really good news. Now let me show you what I did find. So this is the old block right here, and on the surface the cylinders look pretty good. But when you really dig into them, they obviously sat for a long time, and this was allowed to rust. And then when the piston moved again, it just removed a whole bunch of that, and there's all this kind of crap. This one is relatively high in the cylinder, but needless to say, it's all dependent upon where those rings were when the cylinder sat. So some of them are much lower, some of them are much higher. This block could potentially be bored out, and it might have been okay, but for the cost of boring or sleeving or anything like that, it just made sense to replace the block. Now, I don't think this was the cause of all the compression issues, but this would have been a problem down the road anyways. Pretty sure it had a blown head gasket from overheating. But if we had put it all back together using this block, I would have been disappointed anyways, because we still would have been getting poor compression in some of the cylinders over the travel of the actual piston. So it just made sense to replace the block since we're already doing all the work. It's one of those while you're in there things, and those really pile up. All that's left is for everything to be prepped so it can go back together. What I did here was take a wire wheel to the block, and we're just trying to knock off all the loose rust and scaling on the entire thing. Now, we're obviously not going to be able to remove all the rust, and that's fine. I'm not going for concours here. I just want to be able to put on a layer of paint and have it stay on the engine, make it look kind of nice, freshen it up, so to speak. So once I knocked off all the rust, we put a coat of high temp primer on there. This is engine primer. Let that dry up a little bit. And then, of course, we painted that black. And we used high temp black engine paint for this that you can get at pretty much any automotive store. Once we were done with that, we went ahead and scraped all the loose gaskets off the top and bottom. This was just the preliminary first clean, but it was a good step. And after I completed all this, I really felt like things were coming together. Now, I can't stress this enough, I am not a mechanic. I'm just a guy with a bit of mechanical knowledge digging in and doing the work. I'm probably gonna make a lot of mistakes, but that's how we learn, right? I wanna show you guys something I'm pretty excited about. I picked up these wheels I got in the trunk here, and I need your feedback. This is what they look like, and they're in somewhat rough shape. We're gonna refinish these. The question is, should I leave the centers gold and then just polish the lips, or should I return the centers to their original silver color and polish the lips and make these look absolutely amazing? These are what they look like on the car, albeit with the improper tires. These are stretched when they don't really need to be. They can be as tall as the original wheels and they will fit in here just fine. But the big question is, do we like the gold look? Obviously the paint is chipping and they're gonna have to be refinished either way. That is the big question. Do we stick with the gold and refinish them that way, or do we return them to the silver? My wife really likes the gold. I'm not sold. I could go either way. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. So we sure are in a spot with the car. There's really only one direction to go, and that's up from here, I hope. Guys, if this moron can do this stuff, then you can get out there and build the one that you want. And for a car like this that's not worth anything, the only reason that we're going to do it is for the love of cars. And I'll see you in the next one.